Hello friends, today we will discuss about forwards which are part of derivatives topic of RBI Grade B examination. This is a very important topic. The last year there was only one question asked from this topic. So as I said, last year there was only 1 mark conceptual question on the underlying and the derivatives. So we will learn about the underlying and the derivatives very soon in this video. So let's start with the introduction to forwards. Now suppose there is a farmer who produces onions in his fields or farms, and he will harvest the onions from 30 days from now. That is, he will sell the onions from 30 days from now. Today the price of onions in the market is 15 rupees per kg, but the farmer is worried that price might decrease after 30 days. So after 30 days, when he harvests the onions from his fields, he might not get 15 rupees per kg for his produce. Now let's take an example of a factory. I will make a connection of factory with the farmer later in this video. So let's take a factory which uses onions to produce sauces. Now the factory has stock of onions till 30 days from now, and after 30 days the factory has to buy onions. But the company is worried that the prices of onions might increase after 30 days, that they would have to pay more for those onions. So the situation is that there is a farmer and there is a factory. The farmer is worried about the decrease in prices of onions in the future. The factory is worried about the increase in prices of the onions in the future. So they both have concerns, but they are in the opposite direction. So what happens is that they both enter into a bilateral contract, and as per that contract, farmer will sell 100 kg onions at rupees 15 per kg to the company after 30 days. And similarly, the company will have to buy those 100 kg of onions from farmer at rupees 15 per kg after 30 days. So basically, they both are entering into a contract. Farmer to sell the onions and the factory to buy the onions at an agreed price, that is 15 rupees per kg. It must be noted that both the parties have obligation in this contract. The obligation is on farmer to sell the onions, whatever the rate at that time, he will sell at 15 rupees per kg, and the obligation is on factory is to buy the onions at 15 rupees per kg, whatever is the rate after 30 days. The example of such a bilateral contract between farmer and the factory is called a forward contract. Now what are the characteristics of this forward contract? First, this is a contract between two parties, the buyer and the seller, as we discussed earlier. As per the contract, the actual transaction would be concluded at a future date. The date in this example is 30 days from now. And the price at which the transaction would be concluded is agreed today, that is 15 rupees per kg. Now after 30 days the price might be 10 rupees per kg or even 20 rupees per kg, but the transaction would be concluded at 15 rupees per kg. So basically they both had entered into a contract today to do a transaction at a future date, the price for which is already agreed today. Now what is the underlying? Now the important point to note is that there was a question on underlying in the 2016 exam. So you need to understand this concept very carefully. Underlying is something which is being bought or sold. So in this contract, the underlying is onions. But you may come across the definitions on the internet or in the books which says the underlying is a commodity. So commodity is a superset, and all these things like onions, potatoes, all the vegetables, or all the pulses are kind of commodities. So any contract which has underlying as one of these things can also be called that it has an underlying which is a commodity. Now we will discuss some important terms in forwards. First is the spot price. The spot price is actually the current price of the underlying. So in our example, since onions are the underlying, their current price is 15 rupees per kg. So 15 rupees per kg becomes the spot price. What's the future price? The future price is the price at which both the parties agree to buy and sell the underlying in future. In our example, the future price is also 15 rupees per kg. It could have also been different. Suppose the farmer and the factory would have entered into a contract to buy and sell the onions at 18 rupees per kg in future, then the future price would have been 18 rupees per kg. Settlement date. The date at which the parties have agreed to buy or sell. In our example, that date is 30 days from now. So if today it's 1st of March, then the settlement date in this case would be 31st of March. Contract size. It's the quantity of underlying in the contract. In our example, the farmer and the factory has agreed to sell and buy respectively 100 kg of onions. So the contract size is 100 kg. What is the contract value? The contract value is the total value of the contract, that is the future price into the contract size. In our example, it would be rupees 15, which is the price of onions per kg, into the contract size, which is 100 kg. So that becomes around 1500. Duration. Now the duration of the contract is the actual time span of the contract in which both the parties have entered into. In our example, it would be 30 days. That is, the contract is valid for 30 days, or contract would be executed after 30 days. Now let's take another example of forwards. Suppose the price of shares of Reliance in the stock market today is rupees 100. Now we have Mr. Ram, who we can say is an aspiring Warren Buffett and is very eager to make money in the stock market. He will get he will get 100 shares of Reliance from his father after 30 days. And then there is another person, Sham, who we can say is an astute businessman. He will get some money as profit from his business after 30 days, and he wants to invest money in the Reliance shares after 30 days. That is, he wants to buy the Reliance shares after 30 days. So the situation is that we have Ram and Sham. Ram wants to sell shares but is worried about decrease in the price of shares after 30 days. And we have Sham, who wants to buy shares after 30 days but is worried about the increase in price of shares. So what they do is, since they have opposite views, they enter into a bilateral contract, and as per that contract, Ram will sell to Sham 100 shares of Reliance after 30 days, say at a price of 105. So in this case, Ram will have obligation to sell 100 shares of Reliance, and Sham would have obligation to buy 100 shares of Reliance at agreed price of 105 after 30 days from now, that is in future. Now what's the underlying in this example? In this example, the underlying is shares or the stocks, whatever you want to say. Now the important terms which we discussed earlier for a commodity underlying example, we will discuss the same in this example. The spot price is 100 rupees. That is the price of shares of Reliance currently. Future price is the price on which both the parties have agreed to buy and sell shares in future, and that is 105. Settlement date, again the date at which both the parties have agreed to buy or sell. In our example, the date would be 30 days from now. The contract size in this case is 100 shares of Reliance. What is the contract value? Again, a contract value is a multiplication of the future price and the contract size. The future price is 105, the contract size is 100, so the contract value becomes 10,500. Duration, it's the same, the time span of our contract would be 30 days. Now what can be the underlyings in the forwards? As we have already discussed an example of underlying as a commodity and example of underlying as a equity. So stocks and shares as an underlying we already discussed. The commodity we already discussed. Apart from these, the underlyings can be currency and interest rate. So I'll just give a brief example of currency as an underlying. Suppose there is Mr. Murthy, he has 100 US dollars and he wants to convert them into rupees. The current exchange rate from dollar to rupees is suppose 65 rupees, and Murthy is expecting to get another $100 in future. So he wants to convert those $200 into rupees say 15 days from now. But he is worried that the current exchange rate might decrease in future. So he might enter into a contract with somebody that he will exchange his dollars into rupees say at a agreed price of 67 from 15 days from now. So basically he has fixed his exchange rate 15 days from now irrespective of whatever the actual exchange rate is at that date. So that becomes an example of currency derivative. So the concept remains the same, whatever we discussed in stocks as underlying and commodities as underlying. So in currency also it remains the same. Now what are the characteristics of forwards? The first characteristic of forward is that the contract is directly between two parties. So in our example, the contract was between a farmer and a factory, and in our second example, the contract was between Ram and Shyam. The contract size and the future price are also agreed between these two parties. So in example of Ram and Shyam, where they agree into a contract for Reliance shares, the contract size, that is 100 shares, and the future price, which is 105, was agreed between both the parties. So they could have even agreed upon a future price of 107. So that entirely depended upon them, and when they agree upon something, obviously both of them feel that they are entering into a lucrative contract. The settlement date is also decided between two parties. So Ram and Shyam decided that they will settle the contract after 30 days from now. They might have put the settlement date as 15 days from now or maybe 40 days from now. So that is again decided by both of them. So what we can see is that the forward contracts are always customized. So they are as per the convenience of two parties. So the contract between farmer and factory can have a different contract size, future price and a settlement date than from the contract between Ram and Shyam. So the contracts are customized. These type of contracts are also called OTC contracts, that is over the counter contracts. Now what are the drawback of forwards? The main drawback of forwards is risk of default, which is also called counterparty risk. We will discuss this counterparty risk in our next slide. Now as we discussed, Ram and Shyam both enter into a bilateral contract to sell and buy 100 shares of Reliance after 30 days at a price of 105. Now suppose after 30 days the price of Reliance shares becomes 110. Now in this situation, Ram, which is supposed to sell shares at 105, might feel that why should he sell at 105 when the price is at 110. So he might get into a greedy situation and might not sell those shares at 105, which means he is not fulfilling his obligation, and as a result he might default on his obligation. So this is called a counterparty risk, that one of the counterparty is not fulfilling the contract. Now these kind of counterparty risks are mitigated in futures. Futures basically have the same concept as forwards, but they are a different type from forwards. We will discuss about futures in detail in a separate video, and there we will also explain that how does futures mitigate the counterparty risk. Now since in syllabus it's like forwards are parts of derivatives, so we must discuss what actually derivatives are and how do they differ from forwards. Actually derivatives is something, any instrument which derives their value from the underlying. Now since forwards also derive their value from the underlying, that is a forward contract derives its value either from the commodity which is an underlying, like in our example it was onion, or it derives its value from the stocks which were underlying in the second example. So forwards are also types of derivatives. So derivatives is a superset and forward is a subset. So forward is one type of derivative. Apart from that, the other type of derivatives can be futures, as we just explained how futures score over forwards by mitigating the counterparty risk. Then there are options, and then there are swaps. Options are not in syllabus, swaps are, but we will also describe options in a separate video. So the complete picture looks like this. Derivatives can be of types futures, options, forwards or swaps. And all of these can have one of these as underlying. It can be stocks, currency, commodities or interest rate. But just one point to note that swaps can only have currency or interest rate as derivatives. Swaps do not have equity, that is stocks or commodities as underlying. Now as a follow-up, we must tell you that either you supplement this video by reading on the internet or read read from any book. For that matter, you can read a chapter on derivatives. It will always include a write-up on forwards. Or you can supplement this video from our notes. It will help you to practice more numerical on the forward part. Now there is also a concept of profit and loss in forwards, but that is discussed in a video on futures, because the profit or loss concept remains the same in forwards and futures. So in a video on futures we describe what are futures, and we also include how the profit and loss is calculated in futures, or for that matter in forwards. So we'll just take this opportunity to let you know that our courses are available on mobile app, which is the Android version. So you can learn anytime, anywhere by accessing our courses on the mobile app. And for any information, you can visit our website www.edutab.co.in. You can view more of our videos on our channel on YouTube by the name EduTab. And if you need any information, you can always call us at 8146207241. I repeat, 8146207241. Any information relating to our course, relating to RBI Grade B, which books to read, how to prepare, you can ask us by calling at this number. Well, thank you. We really hope that this video is useful, or rather will be useful for you in understanding and grasping the concepts of forwards. If you have any feedback, do write to us at our Gmail ID, learnofy@gmail.com, which is LEARNOFY@gmail.com. Thank you.